Losing a loved one is something that so many of us have experienced. Grief is a very complex and complicated emotional process and requires time for healing. For many of us, it's a lifelong process that we learn how to manage over time. But there's no quick fix or steps that's a one size fit all. Today, I'm going to share my journey of going through grief from losing my dad and share some tips on how you can cope with your grief as well. Welcome to Healing for Brown Girls, where we have conversations about healing for women. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified every time I post a new video. For the sake of this video, I will be discussing grief in regards to losing a loved one, but grief is not just for the death of a person. You can grieve any loss, so that can be a relationship, a marriage, it can be losing a job, even moving from a different place to another. So any type of loss can require grieving. My earliest memory of death is around the age of 7 years old. At the time, I had a cousin who passed away. To this day, I still remember going to her funeral and what it was like. I remember being a child and being so confused and scared because this was someone that I played with often. And one day she was here and the next day she wasn't. And I remember never having an adult or someone just explain to me about death or what that even meant. Then working as a nurse in the hospital, I witnessed death because I had patients who also passed away. I processed it as something that came with my job, and I really never took it personal, and I really left death at work. I really never took it home. But the toughest grief I've ever experienced was losing my dad to cancer in 2019. I know it sounds so cliche, but it's true. You really don't realize how much you love a person until they're gone. While he was sick, I started therapy because I'd anticipated that he might pass away. And I just remember going to therapy, not really knowing how to process my feelings and what grief looked like moving forward. And so it was during that time that I truly realized that so many of us don't know what grief looks like. We don't know what it is. We don't even talk about it. It just seems like when someone passes away, we go to their funeral and it ends there. But that's not the truth because we're still in so much pain. There's no proper way to grieve, and everyone's grieving process will look completely different. I do believe that in order to have a healthy response to losing a loved one, you do have to give yourself time to process the loss. According to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she developed a framework for grieving, and she believes that there are 5 stages to grief, such as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Although I do believe that a lot of us or most of us may go through all of these stages, I don't believe it's a cookie cutter response to grief because I don't think that we all go through those 5 stages. You do have to be honest with yourself about where you are in the process because you will experience so many different emotions, and it's good to be able to sit with these emotions because that tells you where you're at and how you're processing things. You will also want to give yourself time to mourn the person's death. A lot of us, we experience a loss and we go right back to normal daily living, and we carry that pain around and we never take the time to even think about what it means not having that person in our lives anymore. My father passed, that's what happened to me. I attempted or tried to carry on with the way life was, not realizing that life would never look the same anymore because someone who was such a huge part of my life was no longer there. I had to allow myself to go through all of the different stages of grief and to accept it. I no longer fought these emotions and I just let myself experience and feel all of them. There were days where I cried all day, and there were days where I would smile or be grateful for the memories I did have of my dad. And there were some days where I felt completely numb. But whatever emotion I was going through, I allowed myself to feel it instead of pushing through it. Celebrating the person and their memories. It's so important that once you lose a loved one, that you keep their memories alive. Get the person a birthday card for their birthday, or if there was an anniversary that you shared, you can write a letter to that person during your anniversary. Whatever it is that helps you keep those important memories alive is so healthy during your grieving process. Seek professional help for your grieving process. As I mentioned earlier, I actually started therapy before my father passed, and after he passed, I carried on with the therapy, which really helped me during my grieving process. Therapy or counseling really will help your grieving process because it will help you understand what grief is, what it looks like. If you're not comfortable with going to therapy, there are also grief groups. Also, allow others to be there for you and love on you. Do activities to help you connect with your grief. Journaling is a great way to express yourself, and it allows you to be still so you can process your thoughts and where you're at in your grieving process. Increase the self-care. When you're grieving, you're going through so many emotions. You have so much pain. So you do want to be gentle and kind with yourself. You want to increase your self-care, whatever that looks like, whether that's getting a massage, whether that's staying in and watching your favorite TV show, whatever that looks like for you, whatever self-care, you definitely want to take the time to focus on yourself more. Grief counseling or therapy is such a great tool because it allows you to get a professional's perspective on how to help manage your grief. Meditation is a great way to also be still and just be in the present. Reading books is also a great way to help you learn more about grief and how to process or manage your grief. One of the best books that I read about grief is called the Grief Recovery Handbook. And they did such a great job with the book because it really helps you understand exactly what grief is. And I love that they don't only talk about grief in regards to losing a loved one. And towards the end of the book, you do what's called a grief recovery completion letter. And it's a letter that helps you address your history and emotions with the person or the thing that you've lost. Another thing that I learned from this book is that you're not going to have only positive emotions about the person that passed away. It's okay to still let yourself experience those negative emotions or memories. Just because the person passes away does not make them now this perfect person or this perfect figure that you can only talk good things about. I'm going to put the link down below because I really do think that everyone should read this book about grief. It's such an amazing book. Losing a loved one teaches you a different perspective about life. When my dad passed and when I was going through my grieving process, it really reminded me of my own mortality and how I took a lot of time with family, friends, or other people for granted. I mean, even for him, the one thing that I wish that I had or I could get back was more time with him. Sometimes we don't realize how short life is until you lose someone that you love. And it really just reminded me to cherish the times that I had with family and friends and to show up and be there for people as much as I could. Grief also taught me about finding my purpose in this lifetime. Once my father passed, I started to question everything in my life, every relationship in my life, and really seeing what mattered. I wanted to find my purpose so that way I could live life fully. I can live life on my own terms. As you're going through your grieving process, you're also going to start thinking about what are your beliefs about death and what happens next. When my father passed, I no longer viewed death the same way that I did before. I wanted to discover my own beliefs about death so that way it could help me with my grieving process. When I was going through my grieving process, I really tried to find anything positive out of my dad's death. I felt like in order for his death to not be in vain, I needed to learn something from it. I needed to find something that would make life better so that way losing him would not be in vain. And that really helped me because, again, it helped me find a different purpose. It helped me explore myself more. And for me, it also helped me to explore things that I never really took the time to before, and really helped me to discover new things about myself and also about life. Exploring my spirituality also really helped me during my grieving process. I would pray often, and I would have honest conversations with God. There were plenty of times where I questioned God about so many things. I had to come to terms that death is the great equalizer in life. No one is exempt from experiencing grief. So it's not why me or why my dad, because it's inevitable that we're all going to one day leave this earth. And so I really found peace in knowing that I wasn't being singled out, or life wasn't singling me out. I know that grief is such a sensitive subject, and the grieving process will look different for everyone. I really do hope that the tips that I mentioned in this video will help you during your grieving process. If you have any questions, please email me or drop down in the comments and let me know about your experience with grieving. Thank you so much for watching. Like and share this video with a friend if you enjoyed it. Until next time, bye.